Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for navigating the workplace during infertility and pregnancy loss with Jackie Mancinelli. My name is Chrissy Beswick. I am the co-founder of Kindred Beginnings, a family building support community. We offer a safe, brave space for those who are navigating the journey to be supported, heard, and validated. If you have any questions about our programs or how we can better support you, please feel free to visit our website, or you can reach out to either Lynn or myself at any time via email. So now I'd like to officially welcome and introduce our tonight's guest speaker, Jackie. Jackie Mancinelli is a high school English and ESL teacher in New Jersey. She is the mother of two girls, ages 2 and 4, and a son, Richard, who passed away in 2016. She's the founder of Start Healing Together, an organization dedicated to supporting educators experiencing pregnancy loss and infertility. She is also the New Jersey ambassador for Count the Kicks. Welcome, Jackie, and thank you so much for being here. I know Jackie and KB have a new recent partnership, so we're really excited to kind of grow that together, and we're really grateful to have you be a part of this event tonight with our KB community. I'll share this info at the end of the meeting as well, but just so that you know, you can learn more about Jackie's work at Start Healing Together on Instagram, Facebook, and also check out on their website. To learn more or to start a chapter at your school, you can contact Jackie directly at jackie@starthealingtogether.com. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jackie.
Hi, thank you, Chrissy. Welcome, everyone. I am excited to talk with all of you about this topic. So like she said, we'll be discussing navigating the workplace during infertility and pregnancy loss. And please feel free to drop questions in the chat if you have any questions at all as I go through the slides. Don't worry about interrupting. Please do so. So some of this information was shared in the bio that Chrissy had just read. So a little bit about my family building experience. My husband and I had a missed miscarriage with our first pregnancy in 2014. And then we lost our next pregnancy, Richard, shortly after delivery in 2016. He was born at 33 weeks along. And then I went on to have 2 rainbow pregnancies with my daughters in 2017 and 2019. Both were extremely high risk, so very stressful pregnancy after loss. And I founded Start Healing Together in February of 2021, so a little over a year ago. And for this, it really, it came out of my own experiences with loss and pregnancy and just not really feeling supported in the workplace. It's someplace that I spend so much of my time, but I didn't feel like I could be my whole self there. And it was difficult. I really felt like I was navigating one identity as a teacher and another identity as, Richard's mom. So I wasn't really sure how to merge those two together, but through Start Healing Together, I have those two identities together, and I am working to support, other parents like myself. So I am a high school teacher in New Jersey. I work closely with the NJEA, which is the New Jersey Education Association. I am the Camden County representative for the Women in Education Committee. And I am the New Jersey ambassador for Count the Kicks. And if you've never heard of that program, it's incredible, but it is an evidence-based stillbirth prevention campaign. So I spent a lot of time doing that as well. So our mission for Start Healing Together is to try to give a voice to the employee, to the educator. It's a champion member advocacy by providing information, instruction, and support to help alleviate the stigmas surrounding pregnancy loss and infertility. So we hope to make members aware of their rights, to offer emotional support, and to direct them to helpful resources. So although we focus on educators and work closely with those teachers, administrators, and teachers unions, a lot of this information is very much applicable to any workplace. One thing that we focus on is updating your contract in several different ways. And this can be done by talking to HR, or if you work in education, you can speak to those in charge of contract negotiations. One thing that we advocate for is explicit bereavement leave in the contract for pregnancy loss and failed fertility treatments. This is important because we all need time to grieve our losses. And, a pregnancy loss at any stage and a failed fertility treatment, those are all worthy of time to grieve. So we offer specific language here on the slide, and we try to use the wording of including, but not limited to, and then we list out as many different types as we could think of. And this has been adapted while we talk to different members across the country. So if you have any ideas for adjusting this language, please let me know. So we try to use the language of including but not limited to give a little bit of wiggle room. But you'll see that we list out types of pregnancy losses and types of failed fertility treatment, including surrogacy loss. And it does have the language of, upon request, the employee may submit bereavement documentation, which could be as simple as a doctor's note. Now, this information is explicit to, specific to New Jersey. However, one thing that you could do is check your state's information on how they gather vital statistics on infant loss and pregnancy loss. And I could always help you navigate that as well. So in New Jersey, we have the Autumn Joy Stillbirth Research and Dignity Act of New Jersey. And this states that a pregnancy loss at 20 weeks or later meets the threshold for mandatory reporting of death statistics in New Jersey. And once we discovered this language, we have had a lot of success with arguing for bereavement leave, for saying that if the state gathers statistics for 20 weeks or later, then this really should be used to define a child in a contract. So we've had some really good success with this. So if there's anything similar in your state, you probably can use this as well. And finally, for your contract, we strongly encourage the use of LGBTQ+ inclusive language. So instead of maternity leave, use parental leave. Instead of mother and father, parent, and then instead of mother, the birthing parent, or instead of father, non-birthing parent, just far more inclusive. So this presentation will really focus on first, navigating the workplace during infertility, and then navigating the workplace during pregnancy loss. One thing that it's really important to know is that your family building experience matters. So although you are an employee, you are so much more than that. And it is important to remember that really your family building experience goes far beyond your workplace, your job. So whenever someone tries to make you feel guilty or give you a difficult time about navigating your appointments or anything like that, please try to remind yourself that you matter. First, it is a good idea to talk with HR, and you want to do 3 different things. Ask what is available in terms of different types of leave. Can you use your sick, your personal, your accumulated vacation days? Is short-term disability available? There is the Family Medical and Leave Act that does give you 12 weeks of leave, but the one issue is that it's unpaid leave, which can be very difficult financially. However, it does offer job protection whereas other types of leave may not. So you want to talk to HR when you're trying to figure out what you need and determine, what kind of leave is available for your specific situation. And Chrissy, I just want to say, if there's anything that comes up in the chat, feel free to interrupt me, then I can address it.
Absolutely. I think one of the things I did want to talk about here is, first of all, I love this whole slide just in general, because I think the biggest thing that happens a lot, is that people don't have these conversations with HR and then don't know what they're actually legally entitled to. So, right, there is, that kind of push and pull between, you're talking about some of the advocacy work and pushing for these things, which is absolutely vital. But in many states, if not most states, there is a basis of what you are legally, entitled to. And I think a lot of the times, it takes a lot to speak up for yourself in this sort of space, because you're already navigating so much in the family building journey that going to HR just feels like another thing, right? Another task. And so, I think having that conversation is also important. Something that I would also add is documenting those conversations is very important, with follow-up emails and just, I asked this, you told me that, so that you can really work to protect yourself as much as possible.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I have found that HR departments and supervisors, they often like to say things verbally and not put anything in writing. So I have made a habit of summarizing the meeting and putting it in email and say this exactly what you had just said. This is what I had asked. This is what you answered with, just so there is a paper trail that is easily documented.
Very important.
Yes.
Very important.
And another thing is that this is very difficult to talk about because it's so incredibly personal.
Mm-hmm.
And you're really talking about your medical history first, and then your personal relationship and things happening in your personal life. So it is difficult. But I mentioned HR first before talking to your manager or your supervisor, because these conversations will be confidential. Mm-hmm. And so with workplace accommodations, some things you can discuss would be, are you able to come in late and then maybe stay late to make up for those missed times? We know that these appointments, they're timed, and you may not know until, shortly beforehand that you need to go back in. So how accommodating is your workplace going to be? Mm-hmm. Are you able to change shifts and obtain coverage easily? Is that going to be an issue? Are you going to be on your own to do that? Or is your supervisor going to be able to help? Can you work remotely? I have heard stories of parents who will go to an appointment, and if it's far away from where they work, then maybe they work remotely from like a Starbucks. And then once traffic lightens, they go into the office. Figure out what is available. Can you have a lighter workload? We know how stressful this is. So can they accommodate, your schedule and your needs, for a short period of time? And it is important to remember that, your journey may take months or a few years. But if you are looking at staying at that particular company for 15 some odd years, this is a really small part of your tenure there. Finally, remember this is a medical condition. So you should not be given a difficult time to use your sick days, if you need to take time off after side effects from, an embryo transfer. So you should be able to access that sick time just as anyone else with a different medical condition.
And Jackie, here's a question that actually came up on the chat about this, this slide in particular. So what would your advice be for someone who um, is navigating employer policies where they're kind of forced to make a decision, right? A choice between bereavement leave and either short-term disability or, a family medical leave of absence. What kind of
So
advice would you give that person?
that's difficult. So you want to look at your options financially.
Mm,
Can you afford to take the lengthier leave of FMLA that's unpaid? Or is it really important to access those funds? And short-term disability, family leave, and bereavement leave, that varies by your employer and by the state that you live in. I know that where I work in New Jersey, there is temporary disability and it will pay up to 26 weeks, with proper documentation, but at 85% of your pay, which is excellent. Whereas for bereavement leave, you may only receive maybe 3 to 5 days, but you want to determine, financially what works best, and then also mentally. And then another option would be for your bereavement leave. Are you able to break that up, or does it have to be taken consecutively? If you're offered 5 days, can you break that up on a Thursday, a Friday, and then a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Can you take a day here or there? So it's important to look at your options completely and then make a decision that works best for you. Now, this conversation, it's similar to HR. However, if you look at the top, make sure that you talk to your doctor. And of course, you are not going to know exactly what you'll need because this whole process is very unpredictable. So talk to your doctor about potential timelines, and anticipated accommodations. What would they recommend? What seems the most feasible for you in particular? So then you really want to determine your relationship, and the type of environment that you work in. Do you have a good relationship with that supervisor? Can you talk candidly and personally? Or do you not know them very well? Is this a family-friendly workplace environment? Are there a lot of, younger people going through the same experiences? Or, is this just a go, go, go work environment and that's it? Finally, are you confident that this information will remain confidential? Because you can ask that, but we all know that sometimes that is not honored with our supervisors. So you want to figure out your comfort level first. And then with that, I'm going to skip to number 3, because you are in charge of the information that you choose to share. And if you have information from your doctor, it may help to clarify what accommodations are necessary for you and may help to clarify why this is necessary. And if you're already armed with information from HR, it makes that discussion for number 2 much easier, where you can say, I know this is available. This is the precedent that's already been set. This is what's in my contract. This is what I would like to use. This part, I think, is so incredibly important. And find a really good support person at your work. So this can be a coworker, perhaps someone who's gone through a similar experience, or just someone who's a really good listener, or a supervisor. But what I found is that it's often another coworker. Those phone calls with news from the doctors, test results, etc., they usually come at very inopportune times. So is that person available to be kind of on call for you to take that phone call? I know for the teachers that I work with, they're often in front of a classroom full of students when they get these phone calls. And it's very difficult to pretend like everything is okay when you're receiving heartbreaking news. So really try to see if that person is available to cover for you. Also, can that person be on call when you're struggling. Maybe you need a few minutes just to yourself to go cry in the bathroom. Are you in physical pain from, an egg retrieval? Are you having a lot of side effects from the medicines that you're taking? Make sure that person is able to help, whenever you need it, whatever that may look like. And finally, that person should validate your feelings and experiences and not pressure you for information or updates. One thing that I hear from a lot of people going through fertility treatments is that they have learned that they are cautious about sharing specific dates and timelines with their coworkers, because although their coworkers mean well, there's like this added pressure that, this round of IVF will work. And it's really difficult, and it's just that added pressure. So no pressure from your support person. And finally, my favorite, they can field those nosy coworkers. If you're taking medication and suddenly you are wearing flowy shirts to cover some additional bloating that you're experiencing, that person can kind of step in if they hear any, comments happening. Now, before I move on to the next segment about pregnancy loss, are there any questions about the first section?
Yeah, if it's okay with you, Jackie, one of our members wanted to come off mute to ask a little bit more about the question I posed earlier.
Mhm.
Okay.
Hi, Jackie. Thanks for doing this today. I actually do have a question. So I was the one who asked the question more around how do you navigate employer policies when you're kind of forced to make choices between bereavement and short-term disability and family medical leave of absence. So I asked this question because I have personal experience with this, where my HR department actually forced me to make a decision. I really wanted to take a few days of bereavement leave. And they told me I could not, that I had to either take bereavement leave or short-term disability, family medical leave. I couldn't do both. And for me at that time, I was in a very emotional state. And the fact that I couldn't technically at that point in time, the bereavement leave was I don't even know how to articulate where I was at, but like it meant something to me. I wanted that acknowledgement that I had lost a child, and navigating that emotionally was really, really hard. So someone telling me, no, you can't take bereavement leave. I mean, it wasn't the financial piece of it. It was more of the fact, like somebody telling me I can't, somebody telling me that they don't acknowledge my loss. I don't know if you have any advice as to how you navigate those policies when they're telling you you can't.
Yes. Unfortunately, that experience I've heard a lot, both in and outside of education. And it's heartbreaking because you're right, it invalidates your loss. And it's almost as if it's not almost as if it is, as like they're saying that it doesn't matter. And you're grieving a loss, you're grieving your child, and you're grieving a future that you dreamed of for yourself. So to hear someone just very coldly say, no, this doesn't matter, this doesn't count, it's really difficult. And you're right, you're not in the proper headspace to navigate that conversation. And that's where it's really unfair to require a decision to be made when you can't even wrap your mind around your own loss and what's happening. So the recommendation is, if you can find someone who first will listen, and then also is fairly level-headed and can kind of help you work through that. I found that when I'm overly emotional, it helps to talk to someone who's a little bit calmer. and can kind of look at it from both perspectives and then help me work through a possible solution. And this isn't a great answer, but it's because it doesn't help you right in that moment. But maybe approaching your HR now, and this is for you or for anyone, but after the fact, and say, look, this is what happened for me, and I don't think that this is a family friendly policy. And I could help you gather some evidence, because there are some bills moving through Congress and the Senate right now to support lost parents. So there is a shift in national policy. But you have to say, if you really are here to validate your employees and make them feel heard and supported, you need to have this kind of language explicitly in the contract.
I think that's great advice, Jackie. And I think it's important, as you said, to, I think it just keeps coming back to speaking up for yourself. And we talk about this all the time with Kindred Beginnings, is being your biggest advocate. And you're right, it is very hard to do that when you are navigating so many challenging emotions and so much loss and so much pain. And it's definitely not fair, right? That you then also have to take up the mantle of being your own advocate. But the truth sometimes is that people usually are not going to do that for you, which is unfortunate, but also kind of empowering to know that, you do have the power to state, clearly state what you need and how a company can make things better for everyone.
Yeah, and it's what I found is that it just takes one person, maybe a really empathetic employer, one empathetic supervisor, maybe an employee who's gone through a similar experience. So it just takes one person to start a change. And once you start talking about these experiences, you will find that you're far from being alone. That's what I found personally, and even in my own workplace. So this next part, for just, specifically pregnancy loss, and you will find that some of the information overlaps, of course. One thing is that it's actually goes well with what Brianna just said. Your loss is valid regardless of when it occurs, whether it is a chemical pregnancy or a 39-week stillbirth. A loss is a loss, and that is your child, and you have the right to grieve. Now, for the support person, it's really the same information. For this last bullet, there will be nosy coworkers, especially if this is a later term loss. Make sure that your support person, you can trust them to speak on your behalf. I know with my loss, I was 33 weeks along. I had been pregnant for the majority of the school year. And there were a lot of questions, a lot of rumors, and a lot of really crazy things being said. Sometimes well-meaning, sometimes ill-intentioned. And what I really appreciate is that my support person came and spoke to me and said, now, not everything, thankfully, but she did say, these are the common questions I'm getting. And it could range from, what exactly happened with her baby to, I know she's going to return to work. What should I say? Should I say anything at all? So she would bring this information to me. We would talk about it. And I learned to be clear with exactly what I wanted and what I needed. And it gave me some sense of control over the narrative. And it helped to make me feel a little bit more comfortable about returning to work because I had that small bit of control. This is something that I wish that I did for myself. And I have spoken with some people who have done this, and it's been very cathartic and helpful with alleviating anxiety when returning after a loss. So usually people will do this during, via email. It's a little bit easier that way. So this could be done by the parent, by the trusted support person, or it could be a collaborative effort. So you want to ask, do you want to share your story? Um, that is absolutely personal preference, and it may be something that you're not ready to talk about right away, but maybe a few years later. So you want to figure out, what you're willing to share, how vulnerable you're willing to be. Consider including guidance on how to talk to you, how to talk to that employee. And I have for the second and third bullet, it says as dictated by the parent. So all of this should be focused on what the parent wants to give them a voice for exactly what kind of support they need. So how do they want to be spoken to? Do you want just this typical banter that you had before you left the workplace? Do you want people to acknowledge your loss? Would you rather they just, not talk about it at all? Guidance on how to provide support. Do you want people stopping by and talking to you face to face? Would you rather text messages, cards, nothing at all? And, specify what you would like. Do you want to hear your child's name said? Do you want to give permission to your coworkers to ask questions? Is this entirely off limits? And one final thing that's not on the slide, you were always free to change your mind. You may think that you know what you want before returning, and that could change 100 times in the course of a week. It could change a year later. That's okay. And actually, it probably will happen, but you can always change this and be clear, as clear as you would like with your coworkers. So when you're trying to navigate returning to work, talk to your HR and your supervisor. Try to determine what specifically is available. Is there a short-term disability offered through your place of employment? Is it offered through your state? Can you use your sick, your personal, or your vacation days? Can you go on unpaid leave and access FMLA? Is that going to affect your ability to get your health benefits? It's a lot of things that you have to try to navigate as best that you can through the fog of grief. And then discuss your workplace accommodations. When you're returning, it tends to be very stressful and anxiety laden. So can you do a phased return? Are they amenable to half days or part-time? Can you return on maybe a Thursday or a Friday? So you can ease into the work week and then immediately have the break of the weekend. Can you change shifts? Are you able to work remotely even part of the time? Can you have a lighter workload? A lot of parents say that when they return to work, they just couldn't focus or concentrate, and it was really difficult to maintain the same level of work pace that they were used to. And it might take a little while. So it is best if you can have a supervisor that's accommodating and empathetic. One thing that you want to prepare for is difficult and painful questions. Unfortunately, there will be insensitive comments. And this happens also while going through fertility issues. It's the at least statements, or those questions of, do you have a family? Or I know that you're married, but you don't have children yet. Unfortunately, this happens. So you have to figure out ahead of time kind of how you want to navigate that. I did not. And I found that I often stuttered. I would burst into tears or I would run away. And it really made things very uncomfortable. So try to keep your answers short and concise. Practice saying them aloud to get comfortable with saying them. And finally, never feel pressured to share anything. You can always say, that's really between me and my partner, or I'm not comfortable sharing that. That's okay. It's really not their business if you don't want it to be. Okay, so there are going to be triggers in the workplace because there seems to always be pregnant coworkers. I don't know what it is, but as soon as you're grieving in some way, you just seem to be surrounded by pregnant bellies. So you want to decide how to handle that. First, your mental health is important. Never feel obligated to stay in a situation that makes you uncomfortable or upset. You don't have to go to that baby shower for a coworker. You don't have to contribute to, a baby shower gift if you're not comfortable doing so. And it would be a good idea to ask for notification ahead of time when there's going to be a pregnancy announcement, a birth announcement, a baby shower invitation. Usually they're sent via email. So maybe your support person can navigate that for you on your behalf. Or maybe you can ask, you know what, for the next 6 months, can you please just delete my name from that email chain? I just would rather not be notified, because that can be really difficult. You may be having a good day and boom, someone's announcement pops up in your email inbox, and that can be really difficult. So that is the end of my presentation. I do have here the information for contacting. I do work with my male coworker, George Kemery. He's another English teacher, but he is my Start Healing Together vice president. So if you ever need to get the male perspective on any of these issues, his email is just george@starthealingtogether.com. That's on our website, starthealingtogether.com. And then, of course, follow us on social media. But is there any other question I can answer?
I'll give a minute for questions to come up in the chat, or if you have a question, you can just message me and I'll be glad to unmute you if you want to share. But Jackie, thank you so much. I think, again, this all comes back to taking and owning your power. We talk about this a lot with, your suggestions about practicing, rehearsing. Lynn and I talk a lot about like literally writing a script.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you have a script that's different for different people, right? Maybe you are okay with sharing more with a principal or a superintendent, but not so great with the mailroom person, right? And so having something prepared, and if you need to, literally reading it in front of the person so that you can protect yourself as much as possible from those uncomfortable, triggering conversations, because you're right, they are going to happen. And someone just put in the comment, thank you for the idea of requesting your name to be excluded from email announcements. I think that's perfectly valid. And people need to understand and respect your needs. The fact of the matter is your workplace is still your workplace, right? And you do not, to be frank, you really don't need to share anything with anybody who you don't want to, but especially in the workplace, right? I think that a lot of the times workplace culture can kind of be like, everybody tells everybody everything, right? But there may be times where you need to, as you really wonderfully said, take that back and just say, right now, this is where I'm at. And these are things I'm asking for so that I can feel both productive and safe in my work environment, right?
Yeah, and I think that's all excellent, because a lot of this information I learned well after the fact. And it took me years to find my voice. And now that I found it, it is really empowering. But yeah, I try to use this information so that people can learn this far sooner than I did.
It's great work, Jackie, for sure, because I think, I think there is a sense in the workplace too of feeling disempowered, right?
Mm-hmm.
For many of us, we're not at the top of the food chain, right? We are just employees. We're part of the system. We're part of the cog.
Mm-hmm.
But as you said, you are also important, and you have value and you have worth. And what you're going through has value and worth. So, being able to really stand up for yourself is so key.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. And really, we're just so excited to have you here tonight and to, keep this conversation going. This is really important advocacy work for everyone in the family building community. So thank you so much for this really wonderful presentation and for the work that Start Healing Together is doing for the community. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining tonight. I hope you are well. Take care, and we will see you soon. Have a good night.